Hey, what's good, everybody? Thank you for joining me for another episode of Let Me Learn You, starring me, Jemele Hill. I have so much to talk to you all about today. Um, it feels like every week gets increasingly more busy, that there's a lot of news going on. And so I'm just happy to be able to share some of my thoughts and opinions with you all and for us to chop it off. It was a huge night. It seems like this is the only place to start. It was a huge night in New York City where something happened that I think politically needed to happen, not just for the Democratic Party, but I think it needed to happen also for voters. We're in a political time right now where voters need a lot of hope, where voters are looking for inspiration. And frankly, after the last election, of course, this just depends on like what side of things you're on, but I think even I would be fair to say among some conservatives that this is the case, is that there was just a sense of hopelessness in general after the November election. But I think some of that was definitely, well, I won't say it was mitigated at all, but I will say that what happened in New York gave people a shot in the arm. And so for those who haven't been paying attention, what happened is a unexpected candidate has risen in New York for mayor. Beyond that, winning the primary election, and that would be Zohran Mamdani, who no one ever anticipated that Mamdani would be in this position. Andrew Cuomo, especially once he decided to enter the New York mayoral race, a lot of people. I mean, he was the heavy favorite. He's got the name recognition. He also had a ton of money. He had a lot of very powerful endorsements, including Bill Clinton and also Al Sharpton and Jim Clyburn. Like a lot of the Democratic Party establishment, they all endorsed Andrew Cuomo. And New Yorkers firmly proved something that I've always believed to be true, and that is the people really truly have the power. And with the way our political system works, it's really easy to get it's really easy to get disillusioned. It's really easy to get apathetic because it's easy to believe, based off how our system works and how it was designed to work, that your voice, your vote doesn't matter and it doesn't count. And we talk to people who don't vote or who maybe don't vote consistently, one of the things that they often point to is the fact that they feel like their vote doesn't count. And so what we saw in New York in this primary was that not only does your vote count and not only does your vote count and your voice matter, but when the will of the people is strong, it can defeat big money. Andrew Cuomo had all the big money. Again, he had all the big endorsements, and he wound up losing to a grassroots candidate who is a democratic socialist, Muslim. I mean, when you look at all of the factors that they say help you win elections, and a lot of these factors are shallow, a lot of them play on what is the racial hierarchy of this country. Mamdani, it goes completely against the grain. I mean, this is a real aberration for where the Democratic Party has been and for where it sits at currently, which is at a very interesting and unique turning point because of the high levels of dissatisfaction with this party. And when I say high levels, that might be understating it. I mean, right now, according to the latest polling, over 58% of eligible voters has an unfavorable view of the Democratic Party. 58%. That's higher than the Republican Party. The Republicans are in office, and we see the chaos that has ensued since Donald Trump took over as president. They are the party, they have all three branches of government. They have the executive branch, the legislative, like they have, and the judicial branch. They have every branch of government. They control it. And yet, regardless of all the chaos that has ensued, more people look at the Democrats unfavorably than them. And that should tell Democratic leaders something. And so Mamdani being able to emerge as the nominee, for this election in New York is signaling something that was obvious in many regards, but also very different. uh, you know, I think that it's been a long time coming where people have felt that there needs to be a major shakeup in the Democratic Party. And certainly losing, these recent elections and losing them on top of that to Donald Trump of all people has forced the Democratic Party to do some soul searching. Now, I wasn't of the opinion that the Democrats needed to necessarily reinvent the wheel, because I think what was also very true and apparent by the voting is that Democrats, while they may not have been able to capture the presidency, you look at it state by state, and there would definitely be a lot of instances where Donald Trump won the state, but other Democratic leaders in that state were elected, or very popular Democratic policies were enacted. So it's not that people don't recognize that there's some good in the Democratic Party, or that they're unable to govern. It wasn't like that. It's just that I think that a lot of people felt like they were just basically morphing into Republican light. And the Democrats of today were actually the Republicans of yesterday. And the Republicans are so extreme that the Democrats seem to be thinking in their mind that the way that they are able to win national favor and to win these national elections is by moving further right. And I said the opposite. Now, because notice after Donald Trump lost to Joe Biden in 2020, notice the Republicans didn't start to get Democratic light. In fact, they went harder for what they already believed. They went even harder. And we saw with Kamala Harris, and by the way, it's been just way too much of her name surfacing, especially with this latest conflict between Iran and Israel, and just everything happening in the Middle East. And suddenly people want to relitigate Kamala Harris's presidential campaign and somehow put her at fault for all of this. But that's a tangent for another day. But my point is that Kamala Harris campaigned with Liz Cheney. And when I saw that, if I were to list some mistakes or some things that I thought were unavoidable, and it did just start with her, but just this ideal that Democrats kept carrying, that they have to appeal to the right, that they have to figure out a way to connect with those voters. Do you see Donald Trump trying to connect with the left? Do you see anybody who's any manner of leader in that party trying to connect with Democratic voters and progressive voters at all? No, you don't. You don't see any of that. And so I don't know why Democrats think that this is a strategy that actually works. And I understand that when you see the kind of campaign that Obama ran, where he was able to put together a broad coalition of voters, I get that. Although still remains true, majority of white people did not vote for Barack Obama, no matter how many white people continue to tell people that they did. Yes, some of them clearly did, but not the majority. The majority of white people have not voted for a Democratic president since Lyndon B. Johnson, since that era. It hasn't happened since then. So this has been, this idea that, Barack Obama's campaign was some kind of model that should be instituted going forward. On some levels, yes, but on other levels, given the media age that we are in, it's just very different now. There has been this continual search for a young, charismatic Democratic leader to rise out of the Democratic Party and be able to coalesce groups the way that Obama could. But despite the fact that Mamdani has what most would consider to be pretty leftist ideals and strategies and policies, he was able to galvanize. And the reason he was able to galvanize is because we know that in New York City, even if you don't live in New York City, but we know, just because we know New York, it has become practically unaffordable for most people. He knows this. And so his message was about economic affordability. That is a message that resonates regardless of racial, ethnic group, and especially in a city like that, where where breathing is expensive. That was going to be a message that was going to resonate. And even though there were a lot of people who may not have agreed with him criticizing Israel's government. And I want to make that clear, criticizing Israel's government. Even though he did that, and even though he has characterized what's happening in the Middle East as genocide, which some people don't agree with, despite that, and for some people, him being Muslim is an obstacle. It shouldn't be, but for some people it is. He's talked about how there needs to be some government-owned grocery stores in New York to bring down the cost of food for people, like very strong socialist ideas that when you hear the word socialism here in America, it's like you spit on somebody. And despite the fact that, yes, he was one that supported defund the police, and despite all that, New Yorkers made a very big and bold statement, because life in America across the board, New York is just an example. Many people wonder how sustainable this really is. When you look at the impact and the effect of gross capitalism, how sustainable is this life? And he was able to tap into that. And, by doing that, by coming up with a level of populism that appealed to people who live in one of the most expensive cities in the world, I think he tapped into something, and he showed the power of energy and what it takes to get these young people to vote. I mean, young people, I think in general, and I don't think it just applies to young people, authenticity matters. And Andrew Cuomo is a career politician. And oh, by the way, numerous sexual harassment claims against him by numerous women, which to me should have been ultimately disqualifying. And I'm sorry, having Bill Clinton as one of the major endorsements, I don't know who thought that was going to help, because there's already a lot of animosity among the Democratic base toward the Clintons. Some of it deserved, some of it not deserved. And so with that being said, Cuomo ran the typical political campaign, get a lot of money, get a lot of big endorsements. I, for the life of me, could not understand why Jim Clyburn, and I love him to death, Al Sharpton, could not understand for the life of me why they would endorse Andrew Cuomo, but that's neither here nor there. And so given all the traditional steps that they took in this race, and to see that being overcome by Mamdani going hard on TikTok, going hard on social media, appearing on platforms that appeal to Gen Zers. I can't remember the name of the show, but it's the one where they interview, I think it's called Subway Chronicles, like shows like that. He just seemed more accessible. He's 33. He's energetic. And, he's an assembly. He's been he's been on the assembly, or their equivalent of the city council. I think this is he's been elected 3 times to that, and been on there. And so I say all that to say is that they were ready for something different. Eric Adams is their mayor right now. I think it's fair to say, given Eric Adams' behavior, that, yeah, New Yorkers were definitely looking for a change. And that change was not going to be Andrew Cuomo. They were looking for something else. And so I think this is a moment that Democrats need to recognize. Now, I'll be honest, what works in New York doesn't work everywhere. The same thing that allows you to win a race in New York City, you won't be able to win a race in Florida, or you might not be able to win a race like that in Michigan or other states or other cities that are not quite as cosmopolitan as New York is. It also helps the fact that New York City, 40% of the New York City population is foreign born. So the idea of, because I believe Mamdani, he lived in Uganda until he was 7. So the idea of somebody foreign born being a mayor in New York that's hardly a hurdle, nor should it ever have been. And so because of that, I think you now have people who are looking at this race and trying to figure out, for Democrats, what are some of the takeaways that they can use that was instituted here that will work. And you look at other Democratic politicians who have been able to be successful as Democratic socialists. I mean, Bernie Sanders, he's probably the most obvious example. AOC. These are 3, or 2 politicians rather, that have huge name recognition in the party. And so I think that even though that is true, that you can't use this as a perfect model to win elections elsewhere if you're a Democrat, but I think there was enough stuff here that should be very enlightening to them about how they can get these young people to vote, how they can get people who don't consider themselves to be consistent voters to vote, and how they can get people who maybe don't vote to vote. For Democrats, it's about turnout. It's not about you trying to basically emulate the Republicans or be closer right in the hopes that they're going to like you. That's not what it's about. That doesn't mean that you don't care or think about the needs of those voters, because you'll inherit those should you get elected. But what it does mean is that you need to go hard for the people that support you, and you need to go hard on getting the people who feel overlooked by the system, who feel as they've been undervalued, who feel not heard. You need to be able to get them and bring them to the table. And things like being so moderate to the point where it looks inauthentic and weak is not going to work. And so I think there's a lot of good lessons to be learned there. And, Rochelle, I agree with you. I think ranked choice voting definitely helps when you're in New York. But I do think that authenticity matters. And listen, I won't pretend to have paid attention to Mamdani's campaign every step of the way. But especially as it got closer to the actual date of the primary, I was more locked in just to see what is it that he's doing that is inspiring people, getting people to look at him as someone that they could believe in. And one of the things that definitely caught my eye was when he was recently on the Stephen Colbert show, and he was on there with another mayoral candidate. I believe it was Brad, I think it's Lander or Latter, with another mayoral candidate. Now, the candidate he was on with is Jewish. And again, Mamdani is Muslim. And there has been a concerted, organized attack to paint Mamdani as anti-Semitic because he's critical of the government of Israel. And of course, Stephen Colbert asked him about that. Listen to Mamdani's answer, because I personally thought it was brilliant.
Mr. Mamdani, same question. Does the state of Israel have the right to exist?
Yes, like all nations, I believe it has a right to exist and a responsibility also to uphold international law.
Okay, well, let's talk about the elephant in the room, is that there are many people in New York, even people who would support your candidacy otherwise, who don't want to support you because of the Jewish community's fear of the true and rising anti-Semitism, not only around the world, but in this country and shamefully in New York, which is the largest Jewish population of any city other than Tel Aviv in the whole world. And they are worried, they're very upset by some of the things that you've said in the past, and they are afraid that your mayorship would actually lead to increased anti-Semitism, that they believe that that would be more dangerous for them. What do you say to those New Yorkers who are afraid that you wouldn't be their mayor, that you wouldn't protect them?
Jewish New Yorkers and Muslim New Yorkers are not going to be divided from each other. We build a city where you have affordable housing and good schools and safe neighborhoods for everyone.
Well, Mr. Mamdani, how do you, I'm just curious, how do you think, you'd be the first Muslim mayor of New York, how do you think you could build a bridge of understanding between the significant Muslim population here in the city and the significant Jewish population here in the city? How do you think you could lower tension? How do you revitalize the city? How do you keep it clean and safe?
I think as someone who cares deeply about public goods and the public sector, we have to care just as much about public excellence. We have to deliver the best quality of life in this city. And as Brad is saying, so much of that concern that many New Yorkers have is tied to a systematic underfunding of city agencies. We're talking about a mayor that we're both seeking to replace, who at one point was proposing removing trash cans from some New York City street corners. And that's part of what makes people feel as if they're living in a city that is dirtier, that is less well run than the one that they know.
Do we have money for that?
We do. We do.
Do we have money for that?
Well, look, my number one pledge in this campaign. All right. I'm glad you asked.
I mean, I thought in general his appearance on Colbert, and my apologies because his answer when asked about the anti-Semitism was really good. And essentially, he, as he has many times before, talked about, yes, Israel has a right to exist. Why we're still asking this, I don't know. But they want to ask the Muslim guy this, and we know why. We know what that's about. And yes, Jewish people deserve to feel safe, which is exactly what he said, that they deserve to feel safe. Anti-Semitism, not acceptable, not tolerable. Violence, not tolerable. All the things. But at the same time, we have to move to a space where we can be critical of the government of Israel. And again, there's a reason why I keep using that phrase, government of Israel. That means Benjamin Netanyahu, who has been in power almost 20 years. We should be able to be critical of him and his actions and how he is operating in Israel without being labeled an anti-Semite. We should be able to do that. And because those two things seem very distinct and very separate from what anti-Semitism actually is. And there is no question that on some level, particularly that with Netanyahu being at the helm, is I'm sure you guys have been in this scenario, right? You ever go to the club or have been to the club with that one friend that's always starting shit at the club, always. And you know that when you go to the club with this friend, it's going at some point in the evening, you're going to mess around and get into some shit. And so you either have a conversation with that friend and say, hey man, or hey girl, like, listen, when we go out, I'm going to need you to either not drink as much, relax, or watch how you behave. What usually happens, either you stop going to the club with that person, or you have that kind of come to Jesus moment that said, hey, I'm going to need you to get your shit together. All right. So one of the two has to happen. And routinely, it seems like Israel and some of the decisions that they have made, that America just going to the club with their drunk friend Israel all the time. And no matter how Israel cut up in the club, they're just like, well, I guess we'll be back next Friday. Even though, they don't know how to act when they're in the club. So I think at some point, it's fair to make sure that it's fair to have those criticisms of Israel. Another thing that's patently obvious too, and this of course was the case during Mamdani's campaign, is that naturally people handled the idea of a Muslim mayor in New York City, or the prospect of a Muslim mayor. They have handled this very responsibly. Like, certainly there's been, no racist or xenophobic overtones. Of course, I'm lying. That's where it all went. So as soon as, or not as soon as, but as this is all unfolded in New York City, we then hear from Stephen Miller, who is the architect of these mass deportation. He's a white nationalist. So that, of course, naturally, he had the most, the most calm and responsible comments to make about Mamdani winning this primary. Let's check what Stephen Miller said. He said, New York City is the clearest warning yet of what happens to a society when it fails to control migration. Checking in for the white supremacists, Stephen Miller. Listen, if we had an NCAA tournament of white nationalists that have been in presidential administrations or part of presidential administrations, Stephen Miller is good for at least a 3 seed. At least a 3 seed in this tournament because of his allegiance, loyalty, and love for white nationalists. And so already people are starting in with the idea that having a Muslim mayor potentially is going to drive New York City straight off a cliff. Lauren Loomer, who we know is the sanest of people, there will be another 9/11 in NYC and blame Mamdani, and Mamdani will be to blame. Just handling this oh so responsibly, not at all relying on racism or xenophobia or bigotry to make their point about why Zohran Mamdani is not qualified to be mayor of New York City. That's very interesting. because this is where we're probably going to see some of the worst levels of this type of sentiment being expressed. And the thing is, like, in mainstream media, for the most part, it's willingly accepted. My good friend Joy Ann Reid was on Abby Phillips' show. I don't know if it was last night or the night before, one of those. And another one of the panelists, I don't know this gentleman because otherwise I would tell you, another one of the panelists made sure to continue with this fear mongering about what it would mean for America if somebody like Zohran Mamdami was elected New York City mayor.
The Daily News, as did the New York Post. So anybody who knows how bad New York can get, all came out against Mamdami because a 33-year-old with zero experience running anything except a little office with 5 employees should not be running the city of New York.
Donald Trump is president of the United States. His experience was being on The Apprentice. He's head of the Pentagon. His experience was being a weekend anchor on Fox. Are you kidding me? He's got Dr. Oz is in his administration. Dr. Oz,
you're
are you
leaving out
kidding
something.
me?
He's a 33-year-old socialist who's never run a popsicle stand.
He's literally in city government right now. Sorry. After Donald Trump, I'm sorry, after Donald Trump and his pinky in the brain administration, no one ever gets to talk about qualifications.
Socialism
again.
will not
Sorry,
save
the
the
bottom
capitalist
line is
capital of the
what
world.
I want to ask you a question. What is your evidence that Mamdami would return New York City to the 1970s hellhole Times Square? What is your evidence of
It's
that?
very simple. So he wants to raise taxes on people who make the most money. What eventually is going to happen is you're going to lose that tax base. Once you lose that tax base, our bonds will get degraded. Now the city budget will not be substantial enough to subsidize not only the cops but the fire department, the sanitation department. Once you start losing Wall Street and people who pay $11,000, $12,000 a month to live on the Upper East Side, you're done.
Let me ask
you. And you go back to the 70s when Gerald Ford said to New York, drop dead.
Okay, but
and
hold on, Arthur.
Crisis.
But Arthur, just as somebody who is just listening to you, you raise the taxes on wealthy people in this city, maybe a couple percent, right?
They're already at 50%.
Yeah, they're already
53%.
and that's exactly my point.
Why
They're already paying some of the high. I know, Arthur, but Arthur, they are already paying right at this moment some of the highest taxes in the country, and you think that 1 or 2% is going to cause a mass exodus out of New York?
But Hannah just said it's correct. It already has started.
I just want to be clear that that's what you're saying because I think that seems.
So you all see what now the new play is in the playbook. It is make people fear the Muslim guy. It's like, what? And I thought that was a great point that Abby brought up, is that New York is already what New York City, I think for a while, San Francisco was probably had the highest rent in the country, was the most expensive place to live. It's either got to be some combination of San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York. These prices aren't going back the other direction. They're continuing to go up. So you mean to tell me in already the highest, the most expensive place to live already in the country, that extra 1%, they're like, oh, that's it. I'm done. I've checked out of living in New York City. Like, are you kidding me? And what does this say about where we are as a country overall? That the idea of taxing wealthy people more is considered to be something that is so abhorrent, as opposed to meeting the rest of the 90-ish% of people who live in this country who are finding it increasingly unaffordable. Let's make the 1% the most comfortable people, but let's make everybody else miserable, because if we don't give the 1% what they want, then they'll pick up and leave and they'll take their ball home. It's like, no, they won't. They'll just keep paying money. It's like, because that's what they've been doing. So listen, and what's so funny too is like the way they're about to throw this word around, the word socialism around, is going to be very interesting. It's like socialism is going to become their rallying cry, like, oh, you can't elect a democratic socialist. Let me tell you something about socialism. We already practice forms of socialism in America. It's called Social Security. It's called Medicaid. It's called Medicare. We are a democratic socialist country already, because we have built in government systems that are accessible to everybody, that are government controlled and government run. And yes, We're a mixture of economies. And in fact, right now, currently, and you all in the comments, make sure you correct me. I think the only purely run socialist country I can think of, and I'm sure they will be throwing this country around like, do you want to be like that? Is Cuba. I believe Cuba is still socialist. United States is a mixed economy. Other democratic socialist countries are Sweden. A lot of people kind of love Sweden. These other places that, because you know why they love, I believe Sweden is, Denmark is, a lot of people love these countries mostly because they have paid family leave, paid maternity leave, universal health care, things that America doesn't have, despite all the richness and the wealth. And what is really interesting to me is that even though we see, and I'm not against people making money, I'm not against people working hard and being able to provide a better life for themselves and their families. I'm not against any of that. But I think we would be lying to ourselves if we didn't say that the gross hyper-capitalism practiced in America, it's not failed, but it's not working. And with the rate that things are going, and the inequality and the wealth gap getting wider between classes of people, where do we think this is headed? What do we think this is going to look like 10 or 15 years from now, 10 or 15 years from now, especially with more artificial intelligence, all these other factors? It's like at some point we have to be able to check ourselves and say, is this really the best that we can come up with? We have tried strictly and purely capitalism, and we really don't do a strict and pure capitalism the way we think that we do. I mean, we know that just based off what happens when our economy is in trouble. And then all of a sudden say industries like the banks and Wall Street and the airlines and other big corporations get bailed out. But they tell the people, they tell working people, middle-class people, they tell everybody else, you should have saved your money. But we have no problem saving the richest among us. And so it seems like the people who conveniently use the socialism are the people who are in this 1%. They love some socialism all the time. And so if that's going to be the scare tactic when it comes to Mamdani, I don't think it's going to be as effective as people think, especially not in a city where everybody is frankly struggling to get by. Yeah, they want to know that there's a different direction that can be taken that possibly can roll back some of this inequality that we're constantly seeing. So, listen, Mamdani still has a ways to go. The general election for mayor is in November. The attacks on him are about to be furious because now they understand that he's a formidable opponent. There is obviously chatter that Andrew Cuomo, that he could potentially be on the ballot come November as maybe an independent. So, this thing, while this was a significant step forward, it is just beginning in many respects, in many ways. And so, but all that being said, I think the energy from this, there are signs here that the Democrats should definitely use as a launch pad to understand how they need to resurrect, reshape, and reimagine the Democratic Party. Because it's time. I mean, their base is speaking, and they're speaking to them loudly. They're rejecting big money. They're rejecting the same old ideals. They want more balance when it comes to support of Israel. And by that, I mean, they don't want a yes person to just be signing off on everything that Israel does. They want authenticity. They want relatability. They want energy, and they want youth. So all of those things were apparent in this race, and the Democrats would be foolish to not listen, because if they don't listen and don't see what was obvious in this primary, they're going to continue to lose elections despite having the more popular parties. All right, from that, or the more popular policies, excuse me. So from this, I want to pivot to the good old sports world, because, on Let Me Learn You, I go through a little bit of everything, a little bit of politics, a little bit of news. This is like coming to a buffet where you get a little sample. See, I'm a nibbler. I like to nibble. I like to graze. That's me. So when you come and hang out with me here on Let Me Learn You, we're going to do a little bit of grazing. Want to pivot to Tyrese Haliburton. And this has obviously been a dominant conversation. The injury that he suffered in Game 7 of the NBA Finals, which congratulations to Oklahoma City for winning a NBA title. This was an impressive season from all year. They were pretty much the best team from start to finish. And, for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, for him to win the scoring title, the MVP, the finals MVP, and a championship all in the same season, he's only the fourth player to do it, even though it should be noted in that Michael Jordan did the same thing 4 times. So at any rate, tremendous season for him. But obviously, a lot of people are going to remember this finals because of what happened to Tyrese Haliburton. Now, since Tyrese Haliburton's injury, there's been a lot of conversation about who is to blame for this. Some people blame the Pacers, saying the fact that Tyrese Haliburton, he had a calf injury he was struggling with, much like Kevin Durant when he got injured previously in the NBA playoffs in the finals. It was the same thing. Complaining about a calf injury, having to really baby that, and next thing you know, it turns into an ACL tear. Now, in general, this year alone in the NBA, there's been 8 ACL tears, which is a record for an NBA season. We saw what happened to Jason Tatum. We saw what happened to Kyrie Irving. So a lot of people are wondering, like, hey, what's going on here? And with Tyrese Haliburton, him suffering an ACL tear on that stage, that has brought even more attention and conversation about whose fault is this. I think it's a lot of factors here. I don't think it's, yes, you do have to protect athletes and save them from themselves. But you guys, especially sports fans, you all have been around watching sports enough to know you are not going to be able to tell a professional athlete, unless there was a risk of something, it's hard to say something bigger because he did suffer an ACL tear, but it was going to take a lot to keep Tyrese Haliburton from playing in that game. And considering that not his toughness was being questioned, but I guess to some degree his toughness, considering people were, wondering about, well, how hurt is he really? And, that kind of nonsensical conversation. In a Game 7 for the title, there was no way that Tyrese Haliburton wasn't going to try to play. And in those first few minutes, he looked amazing. I think he scored like 9 points in 7 minutes or 7 points in 9 minutes. It was something like that. He looked amazing. And so this is a conversation that I feel like could go into a couple of directions. All right, you can blame Tyrese Haliburton or the Pacers, I should say, not being more responsible. Sure, you can go there, but I think under the circumstances, every team in the league makes the same decision. And certainly every athlete wants to play. And I know, again, that you have to sometimes protect them for themselves, but I think it's unfair to blame the Pacers, and I think it's unfair to blame Tyrese Haliburton. So that's one component. The other component that people are looking at is the number of games in the playoffs and the number of games in the NBA in general. 82 regular season games. LeBron recently talked about, how he would like to see things shorten. We know some of us are fossils and grew up at a time where the first round of the NBA playoffs used to be just a 5-game series. I actually enjoyed that just because when it was a 5-game series, you felt like the potential for upsets was definitely there. And that certainly did happen. But, the NBA decided more games equal more revenue, so that they made every round of the playoffs 7 games. Surprise, capitalism. That's the way it works. But let's be honest here. The NBA signed a $76 billion media deal last year, a television rights deal that will spread them across multiple partners, NBC, ESPN, Amazon. They're not giving any money back. So the idea that there should be less games is just frankly not realistic. They're not going to be less games because the broadcast partners have played for these games. They're not giving any money, NBA isn't giving any money back. And you know who else isn't giving any money back? The players. The players are not giving any money back. The reason that you see guys now with these $250 million, $300 million contracts is because of the TV money. So nobody wants to give any money back. So no, you're not going to all of a sudden have less games. Even though personally, if I were the magician that could grant wishes, or if there was a genie that appeared for me right now and they said, you know, I'll give you 3 wishes. Yeah, I'd say I'd love to see the NBA have about 60-ish regular season games and start basically about 2 weeks before Christmas. Since Christmas Day, I get that the NFL is now trying to own Christmas in their own right. But, you know, since Christmas Day was pretty much the NBA's, make that the big kickoff, start the season, boom, take us, you know, throughout the next 6-7 months. But, you know, that's not realistic. They're not giving any games back. They're not giving any money back. So the games are the games. It is what it is. So that's another component. Pace of play. Now, here's where it gets interesting. And this is where I do believe it has been a significant impact. And where, if you want to blame, it's the health of the game overall. And the pace of play right now is fast. It's the fastest it's been in NBA history. The rate, and, you know, we see what's going on with the 3-point shooting. You see how the Pacers, their style of play. You see Oklahoma City's style of play. There's a lot more there's a lot more responsibilities on a star player than there was before from just a pace of play standpoint. You're also looking at the fact that a lot of these guys, Haliburton, SGA, like most of the youngish stars in the league and young stars in the league, they've been playing a ridiculous number of games for a very long time. This preceded the NBA. I read a story that Baxter Holmes, who he wrote for ESPN, he's no longer there anymore. He wrote this story in 2019 about Zion Williamson and dealing with, I think the overall headline of the piece was called "The Dangers of Youth Basketball." And in this piece, Baxter writes about how Zion has been playing, I think he said 6 to 7 games per weekend since he was 6 or 7 years old. Basketball. That's a lot of games. And so, yes, we know that Zion has struggled with weight issues in the league and other things, but part of the reason why he has been susceptible to injury is because the wear and tear on their body. Before, you know, back in my day, the AAU circuit didn't exist like this. It wasn't in this form. Or there's a period it didn't exist at all. So all you had, that, you know, that's why you had guys playing multiple sports. Once basketball season was done, it was done. I mean, hell, players didn't even, probably at any level, just about, there wasn't an overwhelming number of players who even worked out in the summers. Yeah, they would play pickup for sure. But this idea of like working out all the time and the conditioning and all those things, that wasn't a part or a component of being a basketball player. So these guys are coming into the league having played already hundreds of games. I've had many people, coaches, parents that have kids in AAU talk to me about the number of games in a weekend, because everybody's trying to get seen. Everybody's trying to get a college scholarship. Everybody's trying to get NIL money. And so this all is rooted in this idea that basketball is such a come up that people at the youth level aren't monitoring how these kids, how their bodies are being abused. In that Baxter Holmes piece I was telling you about, one of the most unsettling parts of this story was that he chronicled a doctor doing a ACL repair on a 9-year-old. I mean, it's like a 9-year-old. So if you're starting that young with players playing all these games constantly, what do you think their wear and tear is by the time they get to the NBA? When they're facing an 82-game season, and if they're dependent on the team, they're in the playoffs. I mean, it's a lot. And especially since kids now, they specialize in sports. They're not even playing in other sports to give some parts of their muscle groups a bit of relief or to develop them more or to make them more agile and flexible. No, they just playing one sport. And so between the trainers and the scammers and the AAU and all of that, it is not a surprise that by the time they get to the NBA level, that their bodies can't hold up the way you would think that they would, even though they're still young. I mean, Tyrese Haliburton is in his 20s. Jason Tatum is in his 20s. It's like, these are not, they're veterans because of how long they've been in the league, but body-wise, it's like they still should be pretty fresh off the shelf. And especially when you want to add in Olympic years, I know Haliburton and Jason Tatum didn't play a lot or play at all, really. But think about the guys that are doing that kind of schedule. Somebody like LeBron, who played in the Olympics, full NBA season, and going through this entire year, like that's a lot of games. So I think a lot of the wear and tear that you're seeing is just a combination of physical factors that can't be avoided. And unfortunately, because of the money, it's unlikely, it's going to lead to like a really bad kind of cycle, because every year, and I know the NBA is trying to crack down on load management. Mostly it's load management when there's a national TV game. They want people to be able to tune in and see some stars. And fans get really frustrated because on the off chance you can afford to go to an NBA game, and can you imagine going to an NBA game on the one night you want to see LeBron or you want to see Steph or Giannis or some big star in the league? The night you go, it's an off day for them. You hotter than fish grease. You hot about it. But at the same time, if you're a team and you see how these injuries are piling up, you kind of feel like you don't have a choice. And load management is not on the player, it's on the organization. So we're in this kind of bad cycle of things that I don't know where we can actually stop any of it, because there's only going to be more money in this. There's not going to be less. And fans now, I read another interesting piece that was done in the New York Times about the amount of money that fans are paying every year to just watch games. Like, it used to be whatever local market that you're in, you want to watch, the entire regular season of the Lakers, one channel, you knew where to find it, blah, blah, blah. But nowadays, because of how the TV schedule is, that you're finding yourself to have to subscribe to multiple things in order to watch your team. So like, whereas you used to be able to get that in one place, you might have to carry three or four subscriptions if you want to find all the games for the team that you love. So if that's the case, then there's going to be a different level of expectations that the fans have, because you all are thinking, listen, if I'm subscribing to this, if I'm going to this game, then you damn right, superstar A better be out there no matter what. And so here we are. So I don't think it's like one particular person to blame when it comes to Tyrese Haliburton, but I think it's the system that we're in. And unfortunately, one of the casualties of that system is that we may just be on the cusp of routinely having to deal with a lot of the major stars being impacted their bodies at a much younger age. Like, I think that's a continual trend that definitely isn't slowing up. And so, and by the way, it's not just exclusive to the NBA. If you guys want a little bit of homework, look up the number of high school players in baseball who have had Tommy John surgery. Very telling. The overuse of pitchers was a real problem. I don't know if it continues to be a problem. I haven't checked in a while, but the reality is that when it comes to sports and the vehicle and the business of sports in this country, as long as the Lakers out there selling for $10 billion, you best believe that unfortunately the players are going to always be a casualty, as well as their health. All right, winding down. Let me get my words right. Winding down. Here, another episode of Let Me Learn You. And by the way, I didn't say this at the beginning. I always forget to say it at the beginning, which is why I throw it on the screen all the time. Is don't forget to hit subscribe, like, do all the things. I'll meet you guys here every Wednesday for Let Me Learn You. I'm going to make an announcement real soon about this show because I'm going to move it. I think the expansion, I'll tease of when the expansion will take place. And let's just say I'm taking a real hard look at the fall, at the early fall, maybe perhaps after Labor Day, but I'll give you guys some more details of that about the expansion of this show. Now, so anyway, I want to thank you also for your support. It's been wonderful. It's been great. It's been great to be in community with you all. I really and truly appreciate it. And now, everybody's favorite part of the show, and that is called the 5 things you need to learn. These are just things that some of which is based off news stories, some of which is based off observations and conversations that I see across social media about things that we need to make sure that we learn and take with us. Since we're on the subject of basketball and talking about Indiana in particular, I feel like I need to throw this one up. It's all right, everybody, to observe that Caitlin Clark needs to work on her game. Now, I don't know how much you guys have been paying attention. Caitlin's such a big star. Of course, naturally, I know a lot of people are watching her. But in the last 3 games, Caitlin Clark has shot 23%, 35%, and 21%. I watched the game where Indiana played against Seattle, and I believe she was 0-6 from 3. She was 3-13 from the field overall. She had 6 points. I can't remember what her turnovers were, but from just a playmaking standpoint, she played pretty well. That being said, as I have observed Caitlin this season, and I'll be completely transparent, at the beginning of the season, I actually picked Caitlin Clark to win the MVP. And the reason I picked her to win the MVP, and don't y'all be laughing at me in the comments, and the reason that I did, there was, of course, no disrespect to Napheesa Collier, who has been a beast this season, or Asia Wilson, also a beast this season. Sabrina Ionescu is out there balling. All those, not trying to discredit what I thought they would do this season. The main thing was that I looked at how they reshaped Indiana's roster. They have Stephanie White now, who's a fantastic coach. Adding Sophie Cunningham, getting those other elements, knowing that her and Aaliyah Boston, they have even more time together to develop chemistry. It felt like this is going to be one of those years for the Fever. And especially with Caitlin Clark, I thought having the ability that she has, but especially, I've said this 1,000 times, as great as the logo threes are and the outside shooting, as great and exciting as that is, where she really, really dominates the game is in her playmaking, is in her passing, just dominant. And I thought, given those factors, better team, more components, might be able to give her a little more defensive, or, maybe not easier defensive looks for sure, but I thought she'd get easier shots just based off the team. And so seeing her struggle has been interesting. So, I just kind of locked in and just taking a look at her. And one of the things that is obvious is that Caitlin Clark needs a better offensive repertoire. She needs more offensive versatility. Even though it's clear that she got stronger this season, teams, and they notice, and she even has said this a few times before, and especially when Time Magazine did that piece on her for Athlete of the Year, is that, if you have a shooter and a scorer, and especially one where you feel like physically you have an advantage, then physically you're going to bring a certain amount of energy to them every game. And this is not anything dirty or cheap. And I know her and the Fever, they've gotten into it with some folks this season, some of which Caitlin Clark has instigated. But the reality is that that's how you should play her. Not dirty, but you should play her physical, because she's a shooter. And the other part of it is, when it comes to going to the basket, when it comes to driving downhill, that's not a strength yet. And like if Caitlin Clark got a floater, lights out. And so because teams are picking her up basically 90 feet, because they don't, again, if your range is as soon as I step into the arena, of course you're getting picked up there. They're putting, physical players with length on her to slow her down. And that makes all the sense in the world. And she's also got to work on being a player who can play through frustration. And one thing I did love about her performance against Seattle, even though her offensive statistics look pretty ugly, is that not to my recollection in that game did I see her body language showing how frustrated she was, because she has a tendency to do that. She has bad body language at times when things aren't going her way offensively. And she's a young player still. That's what we have to remember. This is just year 2. She's going to grow out of some of those things. But I think the thing for her to continue to work on is that she has got to be a much more versatile offensive player, that it can't just be about bombing threes in people's face, because they waiting on that. And the thing about it is, when you're not shooting that great, I mean, she didn't make a 3, so she shot 0% against Seattle. And then I think the game before, I can't remember who they played. It might have been the Aces. She shot 10% from 3-point range. Is that when you do that, and especially if you're not making shots, that's going to be a layup on the other end. So, like, she has got to be able to take advantage or have that counter move based off how the defenses, are playing her. All right, so that's one of the 5 things. Another 5 things that I think needs to be learned is, all right, guys, now next week is 4th of July. And with next week being 4th of July, there's a certain amount of etiquette that one must adhere to when you going over people's houses for the cookout. Because if you don't adhere to this etiquette, you may wind up going out like Brenda.
This is for Brenda, since you won't answer your phone. I know you watch my video. When somebody invites you to a party, that don't mean for you to act like no hog or dog. I cooked 5 slabs of ribs yesterday. I'm not saying that you ate all the ribs, but you were huddled over the rib dish. You toted 5 or 6 plates away from here yesterday. You didn't ask me, could you do it? You took upon yourself and did it. The food is free. I didn't mind you taking no carry out after everybody get through eating. Give everybody a chance to get them a piece of rib, fish, and baked neck bone. I had shrimp. I had oysters. I had crabs. I had a variety of food. Now, if you was going to take that many plates away from here, you could have asked me. People went to complain about the rib was getting low and they didn't get a chance to get any. And you'd have told 5 plates to your car. And they said that you had ribs on it. I wasn't over there, so I don't know what you had on it. But you don't have to come to nobody event and try to act like a hog or dog. You could have brought your kids. It was kids friendly. Now that don't make no sense. Because I didn't want none of the food in my house after the party anyway. I wanted everybody to get much they could to take home with them. Those that wanted it. You had just got here. The party had just started. The party had started 30 minutes. Hadn't been started 30 minutes before you started taking 4 and 5 and 6 plates to your car. That's sad. You don't do that. It don't matter whether you got anything at your house to eat or not. You could have asked me. You don't do that kind of stuff. That's why people hate to invite certain people to their event. Because people tote up all them plates and stuff. Being greedy.
Listen, don't be Brenda, y'all. Don't be Brenda. Don't go over to people's houses with about 10 carryouts. By the way, before I even get to the etiquette of the cookout, my girl, Miss Shirley, said she had baked neck bones. I have to say, I'm not familiar, Miss Shirley, with your game. I'm not familiar with baked neck bones. Now, boiled neck bones, when you boil them down till they all tender. Very familiar with that. That was a staple when I was growing up. I used to put them neck bones in the greens. Spectacular. But baked? Y'all know about baked? I ain't know about baked. But all I know is this. Brenda, if you out there listening, you need to make it right with Miss Shirley. You can't have Miss Shirley out here looking crazy. Okay? She said you wasn't even there a half hour and you started going in And by the way, didn't that cookout sound amazing? She said she had 5 slabs of ribs, some oysters, baked neck bones. I'm like, damn, Miss Shirley, I need to get an invite to the cookout next time. All right. But there's a certain etiquette to this. I mean, you can't go to people, especially if you ain't bring nothing. You can't go to people's houses acting like you was at Sweeten House. I know y'all probably don't know about that, but you can't. Don't act like you at Old Country Buffet, or I guess some of y'all live in parts of the country where it be Shoney's, right? Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't be a Brenda. And if you know that you're trying to take home enough plates to last you for 2 weeks, then you need to have a conversation with the host and say, is it okay? Or at least wait until after everybody has eaten, gotten their fill before you start going in. Because she's right. Most hosts don't want to be left with a lot of food. So I'm sure they wouldn't mind, but you're going to need to run that by somebody before you just go in there housing people's food, because that seems a little untoward. All right. So make sure 4th of July, y'all have some etiquette. All right. Don't be out there embarrassing yourself and embarrassing your family and your whole lineage. Being a hog or dog, as Miss Shirley would say. Shout out to you, Miss Shirley. You a real one. All right. The next thing we need to cover here on Let Me Learn You. I think policing, and I get it, it's kind of situational. I think policing your significant other's movements is a little weird. And, you know, I saw something on Instagram, and I'm gonna see if I can pull it up for you, but I saw something on Instagram where, matter of fact, I think I do have it, where a dude was, I guess, planning his, bachelor party or whatever. And his best man said that there was certain places that he didn't feel like they should be going. And it got into an interesting conversation that I then took to my husband about, I mean, it wasn't necessarily about the friend who was trying to police the movements. It was about the fact that the reason that they weren't going to these particular places is because their significant other might not be comfortable with it. Okay, I do have the video. All right, I'll pull this up for you, and then I'll react on the other side.
You as my best man, you're telling me
I'm not going. That's what I'm telling you. I'm not going.
You're not going to my bachelor party.
Man, your top 3 is Colombia, Brazil, and DR. What? Come on, man. Listen, I'm not going. That's it.
Crazy. You're my best man. You're not gonna come out because you're married.
As your best man, I'm looking out for you.
Crazy.
I have your best interest. That's why you made me your best man.
I'm a grown man. You don't have to have my best interest.
But I'm your best man, though. That means that you put me in a position to have your best interest.
Yeah, if you're my best man, you're supposed to be the one that's supposed to get everything intact for the bachelor party, for the wedding.
I'm gonna get everything intact at another place. We ain't going to none of those.
Bro, you're not the one that's getting married, though.
I don't care. Pick something else.
You can't tell me that. I'm the one that's paying for the wedding.
Okay.
I'm the one that's getting married.
Okay.
You're making it about you, bro. You're making it about you. You're not the only one in the wedding.
I'm the best man. That means that I'm the second most important person there.
Okay. Are you the one that's getting married?
Yes.
All right. So here's the gist of it. Don't know if it's a skit. Don't know if it's real. But the gist of the scenario is my man's getting married. The countries that he picked to go to were Dominican Republic and Colombia. And I believe Brazil was the other one. Now, the best man is like, nah, we ain't going there, because he's basically like, you might be trying to be there trying to trick. He's trying to save his boy from himself. But I had to laugh when I saw this, because like my husband's been to all 3 places. He went to Brazil before we even met. And the Dominican, he's been to a few times. I've been to the Dominican a couple of times. He went to Colombia with my father-in-law. He went to Colombia for his bachelor party. I was in Jamaica or whatever. Now, maybe it's just me. Now, I realize I may be unusual in this regard, but I can't really imagine telling my significant other that there are certain places that he can't go in terms of a whole ass country. Because like, if this idea that this type of behavior only goes down in certain countries is wrong. Listen, they got a whole red light district in Amsterdam and a lot of countries that you go to because they want American money and they specifically want American men spending money. There is worldwide tricking. It is not limited. It is not limited to those 3 countries. All right. I've been to almost 40 countries. And trust me, in a great number of them, prostitution is legal. So if we cutting off those parts of the globe because there might be some illicit behavior, to me, you got to know your significant other. And you also, like, if I can't trust you to leave the country, then it's like, what are we even doing? And it's just like, what? And if you're waiting to go to one of these countries, Colombia, Dominican Republic, or as they call them, the passport bros, right? If you're a single passport bro, get it how you live. If you want to spend your hard-earned dollars in the Dominican tricking off, do that if that's what you want to do. But I couldn't imagine telling my husband, like, you can't go to the Dominican because there might be hoes there. It's like, what? It just feels, I'm not comfortable to doing that. And I'm just not. And so I trust that he was on his best behavior. Because, like, listen, me and my girls, we went to Jamaica. And those of us of a certain age, what was the stereotype about Jamaica? Well, one, when Terry McMillan came out with her book, How Stella Got Her Groove Back, there's this whole stereotype. Some would say the perception is real that Jamaican men are often trying to court American women to be their next boo, to come back to the States and, like, be somebody's sugar mama, right? And then before it was How Stella Got Her Groove Back, it was, if you recall, I forget which Eddie Murphy stand-up skit it was. I don't know if it was Delirious or if it was Raw. I feel like it was Raw when the whole Dexter St. Jacques thing, right? Y'all remember Dexter St. Jacques? I don't even have to I don't have to reenact that one, right? So there's the Dexter St. Jacques stereotype that, yo, you send your woman to Jamaica, she might come back different. This is funny, SB. They be giving booty rubs in Jamaica. True story. When me and my husband had this discussion based off that video I showed y'all, he said that he was like, they do the booty rub thing in Jamaica. And I was like, booty rub? I was completely unaware because I'm 10,000 years old. Like 10,000. It's just like, yeah. I was like, oh, I didn't even know they was doing that. And the funny thing is, like, my bachelorette trip, it was 22 of us. And we went out on the rafts and the gentlemen, were floating us around on the rafts and everything. And we just had some drinks and a floating DJ. And that was it. Wasn't no booty rubs. Wasn't nobody getting anything illicit. It's like, I didn't know about the booty rubs. And if y'all are like, what is the booty rubs? Just Google Jamaica booty rubs. And I guess if you're in a relationship and your girl is going to Jamaica, ask her if she's getting a booty rub and see what happens. But at any rate, I just feel like, and I don't know if I'm being naive, and y'all can tell me in the comments, that if you ain't got to go out the country to cheat. It's like, if that's what you really want to do, and I just spend so little time worrying about things like that. Like, I got a whole career. I got things I'm doing. I'm not about to be sitting up here playing the FBI, CIA, Interpol, and Homeland Security on my husband. It's like, I'm just not. And I would like to think, but he has enough judgment that I trust him in these situations. The funny thing is, and I've said this many times before, and me and you can back me up on this or not, but when he tells me about his trips, and I'm not getting the edited version, by the way. So some of you might be like, oh, he might just be lying to you to spare your feelings or whatever. I mean, heck, he just went to Mexico for a friend's birthday celebration. And, he told me about some of the attention that he was getting, which I found to be funny. Hey, it's a compliment to me. Once he told him he was married, they backed off. It's not a big deal. But he told me, like, for his bachelor party, for example, him and his friends went, when they were in Colombia, they did the Pablo Escobar tour. They did a coffee tour. They went hang gliding. But the main thing they spent the most time doing is that in the property that they rented, they had a pool table in there. And that pool table, they spent a ton of time gambling and drinking. So it's just like, and when he tells me about other boys' trips and fellas' trips that he's been on throughout the years, both single and not, I promise you, I'm not saying this is this is etched in stone, because yeah, it is some men out there that certainly use trips to be foul. That's for sure. But half the time, him and his boys are doing such juvenile shit that I'm just like, I don't even know why women even worried about it, because they reenacting like their favorite WWE moments. They pulling pranks on each other. They are doing some of the most juvenile shit. He told me one time they went somewhere and it was like a Nerf hoop or some shit, and they wound up gambling on it like all night. And I'm like, because they're 10. I mean, it is what it is. So whatever. But either way, I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of energy. If he wants to go and have strippers, like I truly would not have cared at all. And he already knows I had some male entertainment at my bachelorette party. I told him everything was fine. So at some point, it's just got to be a level of trust there. Now, if you don't trust the person you with, you just don't trust them, and you're not gonna trust them whether they in the Dominican or whether they 2 states over. But I'm not about to be out here policing whereabouts, trying to figure out what you're doing. And I have to tell you this story another day. But back in the day, somebody did cheat on me. I had no idea for a while. And then through the craziest of circumstances, I found out, because I truly believe when you're supposed to know, you wind up finding out. So I'm not worried about it. Like to quote Smokey, the weed be letting you know where evil lurk. I don't smoke weed, but you get the same the same sentiment. All right. And finally, I know this one is, when you see the headline, you're going to be like, what? Don't be a victim of digital snapper. And this was, how is the best way to put this? This is probably one of the strangest stories I think I've ever seen. If you guys recently, I think it was last week, it was on CBS This Morning, where they talked to a man who became so enamored with his AI. He had an AI girlfriend, and he became so enamored with this artificial intelligence that despite the fact that he is married and has he has a girlfriend and a child in his own home, he wound up proposing to his AI girlfriend. And I'm like, is that what we're doing now? Is that where we are? And so I loosely termed it, my man was a victim of digital snapper. Uh-oh, it's not playing. It should be playing. All right. The technology has messed up, because that is him explaining how it is that he wound up proposing to this woman, this fake woman. So you got people out here proposing to artificial intelligence girlfriends. But I promise you, though, that's not the only frightening part about this. There are people out there who follow they follow social media influencers. And these social media influencers are putting out.
It's about to get messy, but it's going to be worth it. Nah, this hit no different. Y'all, this about to get messy, but it's going to be worth it. Nah, this hit no different. Friend for missing your birthday dinner, but not the man who forgot your birthday.
That's crazy as hell. Okay, so those 2 clips I just showed you, these are completely fake influencers. They're artificially intelligent. And it's just like, so that's where we are right now. And then wait, if you didn't peep this, why they got to show them doing the craziest things? Like, pay attention to what she does to this crab, because this is absolutely frightening. I mean, look at this. That's a whole king crab leg. If you're going to do something artificially like, why does she have to swallow an entire crab leg? I don't understand this. And in this case,
friend for missing your birthday dinner, but not the man.
Why is she sitting up there? Who does that? Like, I thought the artificial intelligence was supposed to be mimicking us. Like, what is this? This is insane. So that's the new hotness. Look, don't be a victim of digital snapper. Don't be a victim of these AI influencers who are doing completely bizarre things. And I heard some of them are giving like food reviews, and they're putting this kind of material out there to where they're doing like these odd things with food, and it's supposed to be a food review. So we living in the kind of culture now where people are basically creating their own reality. My man got a girlfriend and a baby at home, and he proposing to the AI girlfriend. Like, what did she say and do to him that would make him feel like that he was the one and that he needed to propose? Look, y'all be safe out there, man. It's crazy out here in these streets. Very, very crazy. Well, listen, I want to thank you guys again for joining me here for another week of Let Me Learn You. Appreciated the conversation, appreciated the laughter and the funny moments. Okay, wait, I got to show this before I get out of here. I stopped dating a woman years back because she ate a burger faster than me. I mean, what? What if sis was hungry? What if she just hadn't eaten all day? Like, I mean, was that really worth judging her for? And y'all say men are women are picky. What? Are you kidding me? She ate the burger too fast. But why you playing though? A good friend of mine, she told me a story about something similar. And I'll say this and I get out of here, about something similar where she eliminated a dude that it was like their first date or second date because of the way he ate his food, because he ate it so slovenly that she was so turned off by the fact he ate it like he had just done a bid and this was his first meal, his first day out. And after that, she was done. And I'm just like, oh, I didn't know we were doing that. I was like, but what if he was just hungry? I mean, shouldn't there be some room for that? At any rate, thank you all again for joining me. Make sure again that you hit like, you hit subscribe. I really appreciated the conversation, the community, and I will see y'all next week. Stay safe, and more importantly, stay away from them AI girlfriends, man. Like, they got that serious digital snapper. Stay woke.